Welcome to B'nai Abraham Chabad and the bright side. As always, we will begin with a prayer from Tehillim, the book of Psalms. This particular Psalm, 123, talks about the length of time we've already suffered in exile. Shir hamaloi selecha nasasi es einai hayoshri bashamayim hine che'enei avodim al yad adineim ke'enei shivcha al yad gevirta kein einenu el adinoi Eloheinu ad sheychanenu chanenu adinoi chanenu kirav savaynu vuz rabba saval anavshenu halaga shananim abuz legayonim. A song of ascents to you have I lifted my eyes, you who are enthroned in heaven. Indeed, as the eyes of servants are turned to the hand of their masters, as the eyes of a maid to the hand of her mistress, so are our eyes turned to the Lord our God, until he will be gracious to us. Be gracious to us, Lord, be gracious to us, for we have been surfeited with humiliation. Our soul has been overfilled with the derision of the complacent, with the scorn of the arrogant. Join me in the Mitzvah of Sedaka. As we mentioned in previous programs, I've been reading this book here called Positivity Bias, and I wanted to share a story today from this book. A story that takes us back to 1968. There was a woman named Shirley Chisholm who was the first African American woman elected to Congress. And after she was elected, there were some race-related political decisions that got her really upset. There were some political pressure from Southern politicians who, rather than assign her to the committees where she wanted to make a difference, she was living in Brooklyn, she wanted to deal with issues of housing, issues of poverty. They decided to assign her to the Agricultural Committee. And this committee dealt with the needs of farmers in rural America, something that they assumed she would have little influence on. And the New York Times headline was, "Does a tree grow in Brooklyn?" The question was, how is this woman going to have any impact by being placed on this agricultural committee, something that really did not concern her urban constituents. She wanted to take care of the needs of the inner city, and she was quite angry, she was quite upset. And one day she gets a call from the secretary of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and she's told that the Rebbe would like to meet with you. She comes in to meet with the Rebbe, one of her more famous constituents. And during the meeting, the Rebbe tells the congresswoman, "I know that you're upset." She says, "Yes, I'm very upset. What should I do?" And the Rebbe says to her, "What a blessing God has given you." She's shocked. The Rebbe continued and said, "This country has so much surplus food, and yet there are so many hungry people. You can use this gift that God has given you in your unique position to feed hungry people. Find a creative way to do it." She goes to Washington, and on her first day in Washington, she meets Senator Bob Dole. And they start talking. And he was looking for help for Midwestern farmers who were losing money on their crops. Americans had started to import produce, and the farmers were suffering. There was a huge surplus of unsold produce, and he says, we don't know what to do with it. We don't know what to do with it. So she remembers the meeting with the rabbi in Brooklyn. During the next few years, Shirley Chisholm goes on to expand the National Food Stamp Program, which allowed poor Americans to buy subsidized food from Midwestern farmers. And in 1973, the Agricultural and Consumer Protection Act mandated that food stamps become available in every jurisdiction in the United States. She and Senator Dole went on to create the WIC program, which benefits millions of people each month. And during her retirement party, she shared the following words. She said, I owe all of this to a rabbi who was an optimist, who taught me that what you think is a challenge is in fact a gift from God. And she said, if poor babies have milk, if poor children have food today, it's because this rabbi in Brooklyn had vision. More recently, after she passed, she was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. And so this is a fascinating story, which is a beautiful illustration of how you take a challenge and turn it around into an amazing opportunity. That's the challenge we all have. How do we take the difficulties, the seeming obstacles in our way, and turn them around to benefit not just ourselves, but the world around us? Our guest today is Dr. Beth Etra, who is a pediatrician at the emergency department of St. Christopher's Hospital. So, first of all, I want to ask you a little bit about your work as a doctor. Tell us, I believe you're in St. Christopher's Hospital.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Tell us what you do there.
So I am a general pediatrician, and I work in the emergency department at St. Christopher's overnight. Wow.
So you see the children that have accidents in the middle of the night, they come to you.
Yeah.
Have you been operating? I mean, I'm assuming emergency rooms have never closed, and still seeing patients throughout this entire pandemic.
Yeah, so we only see children at my hospital. So thankfully, we actually have very low patient volume right now. So basically, like, since school's closed and people were staying home, we're not seeing a lot of patients at all. Overnight, we usually have 2 physicians on, and there have been nights that, like, I have seen as few as 1 patient the whole night.
Wow.
So yeah, and that was like more in the beginning. The volume is starting to pick up now, but we have like decreased our, the number of physicians working throughout the day, because we just don't have that many people coming in overall, which is a good thing.
I guess being at home is a safer environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and also for children, they're not being infected with the great numbers that adults have been. And then also that kids are not in school, they're not getting as much of all the other things, all the other viruses, stomach viruses, things like that.
Right. So thankfully, the children have been spared most of what's going on in the general population, being safely at home with their parents. and not getting sick too much.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about more in general, in terms of your work with children. One of the things that we've been talking about with other doctors is the patient's mindset, and with how positive attitude that a patient might have, thinking optimistically might actually have an impact on their physical healing. I'm wondering if you, dealing with children, see that at all in terms of perhaps their caregivers, their parents' attitude, and whether they approach it. I mean, children obviously are known to be very resilient, but are also affected by their surroundings and the people around them. And I'm just wondering if you see, in your work as a pediatrician in the hospital, in the emergency department, whether you see this playing out at all in terms of a person's ability to maintain a healthy, positive outlook, and how that, whether you think that has any impact on their physical healing.
Sure. So I think, overall, like this idea that, your mood affects your hormones, which affect, your organs, and can therefore promote healing. It's been studied for years, that there's a positive association there with how your mood is and how you heal. Personally, for me, I see it all the time in kids, like, in the short time that I'm with them. My specialty is fun because, every patient is different because they're a different person, but also just based on the age. So we see everything. So I would say, when you look at a toddler, they are like sponges. They soak up everything. So if they can feel that fear in their parents, they might also feel fearful. Even little things like I've had a parent say to me, "Oh, she doesn't take medicine." And it's like, well, yeah, if you say it that way, sure, our nurses are definitely going to get spit on. But if we try to have a, positive attitude about it from the beginning, that experience might go better, rather than being a fight where we're trying to, push medicine in a child's mouth. Maybe they might want to try it, or trust that we're trying to help them rather than being fearful. I think in older kids, I try to remember that for me, it's just a day at work. I show up, I see patients, and that's normal for me. But every time somebody comes to the ED, to the emergency department, that's an extraordinary experience for them. And I try to remember that, and think from their perspective. And by doing that, I can sort of remind myself that there are things that they're thinking about that I'm not. So they might be fearful. They might be in pain. Maybe they're afraid to tell me. Maybe they're telling me too much about their pain. But I try to really listen, because what they're going through is really unique. And in terms of, I do find if I can be on their side, we can kind of get through this together, and they'll have a better experience, with less fear. And feel better, because when kids are afraid, it's really hard to come back from that.
Right. So that's really interesting, because you're saying that for your job, in order to understand and appreciate the sensitivity from the patient side, from the child side, that what you're doing as your ordinary job every night is an extraordinary experience for the patient. And right now, we're all going through an extraordinary experience that people are dealing with in different ways. And what I'm wondering is whether you can share from your experience any bright side, any silver lining that we can all learn from. You mentioned earlier that the volume of patients is down. Well, that's a bright side. But in terms of what we have learned as a community, as a society, going through this extraordinary experience together, what are some bright sides that you can share with us from your work and personal life, perhaps?
Sure. Before the happy stuff, I do want to make sure that I don't want to give everyone the impression that kids are not getting sick at all from this, because I don't want people to not take it seriously. We are seeing definitely some children with, the classic form of the illness, as well as, some other complications that are going on. So
Sure.
is still a serious thing, and we are still seeing some kids. Just overall, the numbers are not as great as they have been in adults. So, okay, now I'll talk about the positives. So something that's been really awesome. I work at a wonderful hospital. I did my training there, and I stayed on to be an attending. I love my department, the nurses, the techs, my coworkers, and through this, we are all so anxious. I mean, especially in the beginning, we didn't know what we were going to see. We didn't know if we were going to need to be seeing adult patients, because the adult hospitals weren't going to be able to see everybody. We didn't know what was going to happen, and we still don't. And we're all really anxious. Going to work is different, and it's scary. But what's been really nice is I think there's more of a sense of teamwork and camaraderie, because we do feel like we're all in this together. We are all anxious together. We share our feelings, I think, more than we used to, about being nervous. I mean, I've talked, especially because we don't have as many patients, we have more time to talk. And we've all sort of shared that. People from the communities have been so generous, donating food, and someone donated like pants and shirts, and people are there's just this outpouring of appreciation, when really we're just showing up and doing our regular jobs. We're not really doing anything more than before. So that's also been really remarkable. There's like a sense of people just wanting to give, and to support each other. One of my coworkers she's very crafty, and she's been sewing caps for everyone to wear. So we all have these really beautiful, like fun hats to wear while we're seeing the patients, to protect our hair. So there's just been a lot of really positive attitudes amongst the staff, trying to support each other.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
So, yeah, there's definitely been a heightened appreciation and acknowledgement of what all healthcare heroes are doing. And obviously to you, it might be just going to work and doing your job, but for everyone else, we realize that by choosing to go into medicine and into this field of helping people bring healing to patients, you've essentially put yourself in the front lines of this battle. Now that there's this awareness of the commitment needed from doctors and nurses and all of the people who are there on the front lines. So it's beautiful to see the outpouring of support in the community, and it's nice that as a team you're able to be there and support each other even more than before as we go through this collective extraordinary experience. So I just want to add our own thanks and appreciation to you for everything that you're doing to be on the receiving end of the emergencies, and God willing, we'll see an end to the crisis, and we'll be able to be a better community as a result of the positive outcomes and the bright sides that we've been able to learn from this experience.
Thank you.
Okay, so appreciate your time. Thank you for all that you're doing, and God willing, we should share only good news going forward.
Thank you.
Okay, all the best. Take care. Thank you for joining us. And I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Thank you to Diane Tucker for dedicating this series to the memory of Dick Tucker. If you enjoy this program, please consider even a small contribution to B'nai Abraham Chabad. You can donate online at phillyshul.com. Help us keep our virtual doors open. And we'll see you next week.